Sky is so high, if you don't know how to fly, Aimfill is here to make you fly. Sky is so high, if you don't know how to fly, Aimfill is here to make you fly. Here we go.
So I'll just switch on this video and I might ask you questions in between. So whatever they are telling in the video about the number of passengers, about the flight number and everything, you just make a note of it, okay? Understood, guys?
Yes, ma'am.
Alright, now, is this screen visible to you guys?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Number 2.
The Indira Gandhi International Airport, New Delhi, India.
Number 3.
November the 12th, 1996.
By the aircraft.
The evening shift started as any other route. 5:30 was a demanding time for the air traffic control team.
Roger, climb flight level 140.
Further climb 140,
The air traffic controller tells Saudi 763 to
Now passes 230 for 180. Kazakh 1907, descend to flight level 150 before reaching.
the International Departure Terminal 2 is a hub of activity. He then instructs passengers slowly filtered in after brief goodbyes from relatives and well-wishers.
Maintain flight level 140, stand back for higher. Will maintain 140.
There can be a chain of events due to which something like this may happen. One of the main private aerospace distractions in the cockpit.
The evening also started, as any other day would, for VK Datta, the senior air traffic controller. He was about to finish his regular shift. His responsibility was to guide all incoming traffic to Delhi Airport. On November the 12th, 1996, he was also responsible for all outgoing traffic. At 6:33 p.m., Saudi Airlines 763, under the command of Captain Khalid Al-Shupaili, co-pilot Nasir Khan, and flight engineer Edris, takes to the runway.
D1 rotate.
Hello?
A Boeing 747, Saudi 763, is flying 289 passengers to
The voice is
Dhaka,
not
Saudi
coming.
Arabia. At approximately the same time, flying into Delhi from the former Soviet Republic Kazakhstan is Kazakhstan Airlines 1907.
Ma'am?
It is commanded by Captain Cherepanov and co-pilot Jangirov, who is flying the aircraft. Flight engineer Chuprov, radio operator Reb in charge of all communication, and navigator Arabayev assist them. Kazakh 1907 is flying 27 passengers
Hello?
to New Delhi. Three minutes after takeoff from Delhi Airport, on board Saudi 763,
Can you guys hear me now?
16-year-old Sarab and 14-year-old Gaurav are excited.
Hello, can you
Not
guys hear
only
me?
is this their first flight,
Okay, Shri, listen
they're
to me.
going to
I
see
am
their
already
parents
sharing
after 9 long
the
months.
screen, so you are not supposed to do anything
That
with
day I
that,
had
okay?
spoken to them in the morning.
Don't share the
I
screen.
spoke to my eldest son. The younger one was sleeping.
Okay,
I
ma'am.
thought they are coming today. We get to talk a lot. I'll
camera,
wake him up.
like we
This
realized
was
that
their
there
first
was no
flight.
question of any
They checked in by
by
themselves, did
the
everything on their own.
Kazakh
Went through security
76
checks and
aircraft.
then boarded
There
the
was
aircraft.
no
It was
part
the
of
first
it.
flight. This was the last flight as well.
35-year-old Farah Mumtaz is torn between leaving her
Wait,
daughters in Delhi and visiting her husband in Jeddah.
I was the
Okay.
last one to say goodbye.
Guys,
When I hugged her,
video,
she
don't
told
do
me to
anything.
behave and not
Don't
trouble anymore.
try
My
to
mother was
share
leaving
your
for
screen or
15
do it.
days. We had never
Anything.
stayed
Just
away
listen
from
to
her
it,
for
okay?
that long. We were crying when she
Till
left.
where you guys have already
I
seen.
don't know why, but I felt that this was the last time I was seeing her.
Who will tell me till where you
Muhammad
guys
Tahir,
have
his wife Rihanna,
seen
and
this
their
video?
8-month-old son Taimur are finally on their way to Al Jubail near Dahran. A week ago, they had to cancel their ticket. Their son was unwell.
Have you seen this?
The memories are the only thing I have of
For that long.
I had a horrific crash the night before they left. I don't know why.
Shall I start from here?
Yes,
In my dream, I saw a man who told me to hold on to my heart.
Two aircraft are in the same airspace on opposite headings. The probability of their colliding head-on in the air is 1 in 100 million. Yet it happened. Why?
Vital collision accident can take place. Pilots not adhering to it. Number two, errors in the reading. Number three, erroneous instructions by the aircraft. Roger, climb flight level 140.
VK Air Traffic Control tells Saudi 763 to climb to 14,000 feet.
Kazakh 1907, descend to flight level 150, report reaching.
He then instructs Kazakh 1907 to descend to 15,000 feet.
Maintain flight level 140, stand back for higher. Maintain 140. 140. There can be a chain of something like this may happen. One of the main private events is distractions in the cockpit.
VK warns Kazakh 1907 about Saudi 763 at 14,000 feet.
Saudi Boeing 747.
But to no avail. At 6:40 p.m., the seemingly impossible happens. Saudi 763 and Kazakh 1907 crash over New Delhi in the world's worst mid-air collision in history. 349 lives are lost in a split second.
I was actually leading office when my input editor Suparna Singh said, Vishnu, there is some news which is coming in which we'd like you to check out news of possible disaster, possible air crash. We drove out from Delhi, we drove into Haryana. At that stage, we didn't have any information about just where the crash had taken place, so we just proceeded in a general direction. I would say it was about 9 to 9:50 in the evening at this stage. We stopped the vehicle immediately, and the wreckage was about a kilometer away from me. And as one kept walking, I realized all around me there were clumps. What I thought was cow dung. And it wasn't too long, perhaps just a few seconds, when I realized that, look, maybe these clumps aren't manure at all, that perhaps this could be debris or perhaps this could be something else. And I immediately told Tulsi, my camera person, to switch on his camera light. And immediately we saw all around us, we saw dead bodies all around us. Within a few moments of actually switching on our camera light, we realized that there was no question of any survivors. The Saudi Boeing 747, the Kazakh Ilyushin 76 aircraft, there was no part of the fuselage of the aircraft which was intact. Everything had been obliterated. There were dead bodies all around. It was abundantly apparent that there was no one who would survive this.
When this incident happened, I was 7 years old. For the next couple of years, I kept thinking she'll come back.
They have gone to get my son. He's hurt, but he'll be back. He'll be back.
I could only find the passport of my eldest son.
I could only find the passport of my eldest son.
It took a second for everything to be destroyed.
There were no survivors. 349 lives are lost in a split second. In the world's worst mid-air collision in history. Overnight, the small town of Cherki, where the shot from obscurity into the annals of aviation history, to be synonymous with death and destruction forever. To be synonymous.
I found a letter in the crash site. A girl had written to her brother, "Get me a nice dress."
I found a letter in the pen.
Come back soon.
Come back soon.
Villagers who had their dinner
before the crash
were the only ones
who ate that now.
With so many dead bodies lying in our village. It felt like we had lost our family.
Relatives came looking for their people. They asked us to help, but how could we identify them? They were beyond recognition. Some of them couldn't speak. Their pain was evident.
The full extent of the tragedy was visible from the air. The wreckage of the two aircraft was spread over 7 kilometers. Whatever was left of Saudi 763 was either buried in the ground or lay scattered in tangled heaps of molten metal. And they too told a story. They told the investigators how the Boeing 747 disintegrated in midair.
747 lost its tail, went out of control, spinning violently, whereby the wings separated and four engines fell miles apart.
Kazakh 1907 had survived in bits and pieces, shattered, but the burnt instrument console was still intact. Charred remains of its fuselage stood as a lone witness to a startling fact that the aircraft had not disintegrated in midair.
So that means that it had some liability and something very good. But it broke after impact with the
Primary investigation of the wreckage suggested 2 points of impact.
The 747, I believe, was fairly straight and level, whereas the Kazakh aircraft was slightly banked and offset slightly.
I believe, was fairly straight and level, whereas the wings
contacted one wing off of the Kazakh aircraft, and certainly the tail off of the 747.
And as far as the altitude of impact was concerned, the only clue was from one of the altimeters of Kazakh 1907, found in the wreckage. It was frozen at 14,895 feet.
It could be anything. There are so many.
It could be anything. There are so many evidences which are to be collected, compared, analyzed, and we were mostly interested in now looking for black boxes, which are prime evidence material for any.
The two black boxes were found the day after. The Indian Court of Inquiry, the investigation agency, sealed the black boxes and sent them for decoding. While Kazakh 1907's black box would be decoded in Moscow, Saudi 763's black box would be decoded in the United Kingdom. But to begin with, the investigation headed not too far from DGITO to the air traffic control, the ATC.
What happened is something should not happen. In no ATC in the world would ever like a air pollution accident to take place. And immediately it is felt that it could be mistaken their part. That would be the normal reaction.
The unblinking watchful eyes that stare at the radar screen day in and day out are human. And sometimes it is human error that results in potentially disastrous consequences.
It might give you wrong or clear too. There have been various instances where the ATC controller has given wrong altitude clearance due to accidents have taken place.
When VK Dutta took over his shift on November 12, 1996, he brought with him more than 10 years of experience and proficiency as an air traffic controller. Was it possible that he had given incorrect instructions that led to the mid-air collision? The first course of action for the investigators was to replay the ATC tapes. 8 minutes from impact, Saudi 763, after takeoff, contacts VK Dutta. Contacts VK Dutta.
Saudi 763 identified on departure, climb flight level 1.
Initially flight level 100, standby for higher. Saudi 763.
Standby for high.
He asks them to climb to flight level 100 or 10,000 feet. Kazakh 1907 is close to 23,000 feet. 6 minutes from impact. Kazakh 1907 at 23,000 feet. Contacts him.
Roger, Kazakh 1907, descend to flight level 150, report reaching.
Descended 150, Kazakhstan 190.
VK Dutta clears descent to flight level 150 or 15,000 feet. Saudi 763 is close to 10,000 feet. 4 minutes from impact. Saudi 763 now at 10,000 feet. Contacts him for further descent. Now at 10,000 feet. Contacts him for further
flight level 140.
Further climb 140 Saudi 763.
VK Dutta clears ascent to flight level 140, 14,000 feet. Kazakh 1907 is now at 15,000 feet. 1.5 minutes from impact. Saudi 763 asks VK Dutta for further instructions.
Approaching 140 for higher.
Roger, maintain flight level 140, stand by for higher.
Saudi 763 will maintain 140.
1.5 minutes from impact. He asks them to maintain 14,000 feet till further notice. Kazakh 1907 is at 15,000 feet. Two aircraft are in the same airspace. Saudi 763 is at 14,000 feet. Kazakh 1907 is at 15,000 feet. 1,000 feet separates them. That's safe enough, according to ICAO, the International Civil Aviation Organization. But shouldn't VK Dutta warn them of each other? He does. 1 minute from impact. DGITO warns Kazakh 1907 of Saudi 763 at 14,000 feet. 8 miles in front of them. But he does not warn the Saudi aircraft.
The government doesn't say that. But should not take it for granted when blips are dealing that they are vertical. Ensure they are by repeating.
But the fact remains that DGITO was a silent spectator to the mid-air collision. He had told the aircraft to stay at separate altitudes. He was assuming that they would pass each other safely. They had 1,000 feet between them.
Because he was thinking probably they were merging and going to reappear both sides. And waiting for giving it further distance. Because he was thinking probably they were merging an incoming aircraft and flight going to reappear for giving it and flight level.
It was evident that one of the aircraft, or both the aircraft, had breached its assigned flight level. By how much? And why? Months after the accident, and why? A cold February morning in Moscow, the black box of Kazakh 1907 was cut open. The investigators heard the voices of the Kazakh crew for the first time. It was clear from the tape that the air traffic controller instructed the Kazakh crew to stay at 15,000 feet. He also told them to look out for the Saudi aircraft and to report back once they had sighted it. The turning point of the investigation was when the digital flight data recorder that records altitude, speed and other technical parameters was decoded. It ruled out technical malfunction. The altitude of impact could not be calculated with accuracy. It had a huge margin of error. But the graph revealed a startling fact. Kazakh 1907 had descended below 15,000 feet with accuracy. It had a huge margin of error.
This was a point which we all had in our mind at the time. Why? The point which we all had. If a pilot is told to maintain in our mind at the time, why? Doesn't maintain. If a pilot is told to maintain certain level and if he doesn't maintain, there must be some.
Just descended, but it's the puzzling part of building up why in fact if they made an error, puzzling part of building up why in fact if they made an error, and trying to piece that together.
The possible answer to that question lay with the sole eyewitness to the mid-air collision, Captain Timothy J. Place of the United States Air Force. He was flying into New Delhi Airport at the same time. He had seen the collision from 20,000 feet.
We descended down beneath 20,000 feet on the arrival. It was about dusk. We noticed out of our right-hand side a large cloud lit up with an orange glow. At first we thought it would be lightning, but the glow stayed and became brighter and intensity lit up the area very bright. Two fireballs seemed to appear heading in our general direction, not in our vicinity, direction away from each other. The glow and the intensity of the cloud became dimmer, and the two fireballs proceeded to descend down and hit the ground.
The mid-air collision happened in the clouds. Is it possible that Kazakh 1907 had descended due to bad weather? It had happened before. On December 19, 1973, the Delhi airport is enveloped in a thick fog. Visibility is down to 1,000 meters. A Lufthansa Boeing 707 undershoots the runway and crash lands 1,500 feet. inquiry commission finds out that the co-pilot who was flying the aircraft did not monitor the descent adequately. He was too busy trying to land the aircraft in the sudden haze of thick fog that impaired his visibility. Could the same thing have happened to Kazakh 1907? Could they have been caught in freak weather condition? Did co-pilot Janarov not monitor the altitude? Could he have been too busy battling bad weather?
The sorts of weather conditions that can cause an aircraft lose a great deal of altitude, things like thunderstorm activity, up drafts and down drafts, center cloud. That could have caused it, one of them to descend or another to climb.
But on November the 12th, 1996, the Met Department had not issued a severe weather warning. It was slightly foggy, scattered clouds, and that was about it. Most important, Kazakh 1907's cockpit voice recorder did not record any intra-cockpit conversation relating to bad weather. Neither did the digital flight data recorder record sudden changes in the aircraft's movements, nor any severe weather condition. There was no sudden descent. Kazakh 1907 had descended gradually.
Don't think that the actual weather conditions would have caused the Kazakh aircraft to descend.
It was like a jigsaw puzzle whose pieces just didn't fit. Kazakh 1907 had descended below its assigned 15,000 feet. But the altimeter found in the wreckage was frozen at 14,895 feet. If that's the altitude at which the collision occurred, it meant that even the Saudi aircraft had reached its assigned altitude. It had climbed above 14,000 feet. Now, all the answers lay in the black box of Saudi 763. At the Aircraft Accident Investigation Bureau in Farnborough, United Kingdom, the black box of Saudi 763 was cut open. The investigators heard the voices of the crew of Saudi 763 for the first time. It was clear from the text that the air traffic controller had instructed the Saudi crew to climb to 14,000 feet and stay there until further notice. Saudi 763's digital flight data recorder was analyzed. The altitude of impact was 14,000 feet. The margin of error was plus or minus 120 feet. Saudi 763 did not ascend above 14,000 feet. Kazakh 1907 had descended below 15,000 feet. Why had Kazakh 1907 come down? Why was one of the altimeters in the Kazakh aircraft frozen at 14,895 feet? What could possibly be the explanation for it? What had happened in the cockpit of Kazakh 1907? It has been 5 years since the dissolution of the Soviet Union. The Commonwealth of Independent States are struggling to stabilize their economy amidst a politically volatile environment. Their airlines are no different. Kazakhstan Airlines, the state-owned airline of the country, has a bad safety record. It flies rickety aircraft, sometimes with a cockpit crew not conversant with flying outside the former Soviet Union. There have been numerous crashes and near misses. 3 in 1995 itself. But as far as Kazakh 1907 is concerned, the Ilyushin jet did not have any technical snags, and the crew was well conversant with flying outside the former Soviet Union. In fact, Captain Cherepenov had 708 hours of flight time on international routes. Co-pilot Janarov, pilot flying, had 207 hours. Flight engineer Chukrov had 1,178 hours. Radio operator Yep had 645. Navigator Arabayev had 581 hours of flight time on international routes. How is it possible that a crew with such experience did not level the aircraft at the assigned altitude of 15,000 feet?
far as the algorithm, you have to physically level out the aircraft at a particular height, test the height log, and then maintain the required speed at that particular height. It is done by the autopilot itself, but by physical involvement of the pilot or the co-pilot.
But in the cockpit voice recording, there are no call-outs by the co-pilot or the pilot to the flight engineer for more power to maintain speed for a particular altitude, a prerequisite for leveling an aircraft.
A plain simple explanation could be that it was a controlled flight to a lower level resulting into a collision.
A controlled flight. That means that the crew of Kazakh 1907 descended below 15,000 feet with intent. They kept descending because they never knew that their assigned altitude was 15,000 feet.
Every accident is an avoidable accident. Every accident could have been an avoidable accident. But for certain failures on part of a human
It's as simple and as tragic as that. A 1 in 100 million possibility became a horrific reality due to human error. 349 lives are lost in a split second because one of the aircraft did not maintain its assigned height. Every accident, every disaster has a sequence, links in the chain of events. One mistake leads to another, which finally leads to the catastrophe. In the world's worst mid-air collision, the sequence started 8 minutes before at 6:33 p.m. when Saudi 763 takes off. DGITO assigns them 10,000 feet. Kazakh 1907 is at about 23,000 feet. Both aircraft are in the same airspace on opposite ends. This should not have happened. This is the first mistake. The first link in a chain of events that leads to the disaster. To avoid this, the airspace above Delhi Airport should have been unidirectional. There should be two separate air corridors, one for the departing aircraft and the other for arriving aircraft. Then two aircraft on opposite headings would never share the same airspace. But this wasn't the case at Delhi Airport. There just wasn't enough room. Part of the airspace is reserved for the Indian Air Force.
Why do we have to wait any kind of disaster? Some lives are lost. There may be certain constraints which I can understand, but not to an extent where to wait for a crash or something like a time bomb ticking.
The time bomb is ticking. 6 minutes to impact. Kazakh 1907 contacts DGITO for the first time. He assigns them 15,000 feet. The radio operator acknowledges the height, but astonishingly does not inform the two pilots. Worse still, the navigator also hears the assigned flight level on his headset. He is heard converting it to meters for the two pilots, but neither of them acknowledges the assigned height. This is the second link to disaster.
My personal business is that there was confusion about pilots what their altitude was. There may have been some language difficulties.
The pilot and co-pilot's knowledge of English is limited. The radio operator is translating all commands from the Delhi air traffic control for them.
Pilot flies, gets the information, directly makes the reaction. Are spontaneous, instinctive.
gradually descending. It's now at about 16,000 feet. Captain Cherepenov, the pilot who is not flying, is supposed to inform the cockpit crew of the estimated time and height to level out. He never does. This is the third link to the disaster.
He was the captain of the aircraft, the commander of the ship. So he should have known what height would be level out.
1.5 minutes to impact. Saudi 763 is told to stay at 14,000 feet to further notice. 1 minute to impact. At 6:39 p.m. The Kazakh radio operator tells VK they are at 15,000 feet. This is another extraordinary error. In reality, they are at 16,300 feet. The altimeter is on the front instrument console. The radio operator may not have seen it. This is the fourth to the disaster. Seconds before impact, VK data tells Kazakh 1907 about Saudi 763 in front of him. Kazakh 1907 is already below 15,000 feet. By the time he completes the transmission with the radio operator of Kazakh 1907, the aircraft is at 14,500 feet. Gradually descending, it enters into a cloud layer. Saudi 763 at 14,000 feet enters the same cloud layer. The first signs of trouble are heard in the Kazakh cockpit. The captain asks for the assigned flight level for the first time. Kazakh 1907 is still descending, now at about 14,100 feet. Saudi 763 is at 14,000 feet. Seconds later, the two aircraft are going to crash. Even in these circumstances, with better equipment, the impending collision could have been averted. But SSR, or Secondary Surveillance Radar, that can tell a control of the altitude of an aircraft, is not installed in the Delhi air traffic control. The controllers still work on archaic primary radar that can only tell them approximate headings. This means that VK Dutta was not aware of Kazakh 1907's unauthorized descent. The secondary surveillance radar had been in the offing. Mired in bureaucracy, the project lay to one side.
There are too many channels to go through, hurdles to cross, so these things take time.
The fifth link to the collision is complete. 7 seconds before impact, a tragic sequence of events unfolds in the Kazakh cockpit. The flight engineer realizes that the aircraft has descended below 15,000 feet, their assigned flight level. He probably tries to accelerate to climb, but the captain asks him to hold on and not to accelerate. The flight engineer responds by calling out, holding.
What I feel has happened at that point of time.
The engineer has realized that the aircraft has gone below 150. He has started opening power, anticipating the next one I will get a call for climbing or accelerating. But the captain is not yet sure. Maybe he's made a gesture to the flight engineer that hold the power.
Kazakh 1907 holds its course. It keeps descending. Pilots of Kazakhstan Airlines 1907 don't know that their assigned altitude is 15,000 feet. The air traffic controller can't warn him. He doesn't have secondary surveillance radar. There is a last resort. But neither of the aircraft has traffic collision avoidance systems installed. They do not have onboard computers that can warn them of another aircraft directly in front of them and suggest evasive action.
That is the last filter for collision avoidance, which is independent of any ground control Any ground radar, it is aircraft to aircraft. Collision avoidance systems give time which is sufficient in most cases to avoid collisions.
But the Civil Aviation Ministry never made TCAS mandatory over Indian airspace by 1996. It took India a mid-air collision to implement these systems. The sixth and the final link to the collision is complete. 2 seconds to impact. Saudi 763 is at 14,000 feet. Kazakh 1907 is at about 14,000 feet. The radio operator shouts out a word. The captain asks for full power. If only he had. Kazakh 1907 would have passed safely below Saudi 76, but it's too late. The flight engineer opens full power on all Kazakh 1907 accelerates to climb to 15,000 feet. There's chaos in the cockpit. Everyone's screaming. They have just seen the Saudi 763 coming towards them. At 6:40 p.m., 14,000 feet over Turkey, the left wing of Kazakh 1907 crashes into the two left engines of Saudi 763. Saudi 763 catches fire instantaneously. It goes into a nosedive, spinning violently. Saudi 763 disintegrates in midair. The last recording in the Saudi cockpit is a prayer. Kazakh 1907 keeps the altimeter, later found in the wreckage, freezes at 14,895 feet. The aircraft reaches 15,856 feet and falls down to earth. 349 souls, 349 dreams, and 349 hopes are extinguished in a split second. Today, the words, "if only," are the only words that echo in the minds of many. 10 years later, Kazakhstan Airlines has stopped operating. English is now a primary qualification for pilots from the Commonwealth of Independent States consisting of former Soviet republics. The Indian airspace is now unidirectional. All aircraft flying into it have TCAS, and the Delhi airport has secondary surveillance radar. This disaster served as a precursor to lots of improvements, but at what cost?
Isn't my daughter-in-law beautiful? My son was also good. He used to say, "I'll take care of my mother. She took care of all of us, all our lives. Gave us a good education. Brought all of us up." He used to say very nice things. I dream of him. Every time he says, "I'll come back," I keep asking him, when?
It is very difficult in life to lose young children. I only have their memories now.
Alright guys, did you see the video? Okay.
Yes.
So, who will tell me what exactly happened?
There was a collision between two flights, Kazakh flight and Saudi.
Your voice is not clear, Shubham. I can't hear you. Anybody, you guys can hear me?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, anybody else want to share that? What exactly happened?
It was a mid-air collision that is caused because of the pilot's error.
Okay, yes, right. And what was the new SOP formed after that?
They installed this TCAS.
Sorry, what?
TCAS, ma'am, TCAS.
DCAS is what? DCAS is the authority.
The secondary surveillance radar they installed.
Can you write it down in the chat box, Shubham, because your voice is cracking. I can't hear you at all. Okay, anybody else wants to share what exactly happened? Okay, so are you guys ready to give the test for yesterday's class?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, everything is clear? Do you guys have any doubts? Anything? Okay, am I audible to you guys? Because I can't hear you at all.
Ma'am, yes, you are audible. You can hear you.
Okay, great.
Ma'am, I have a problem.
I'm sorry?
Divya, ma'am, I have a problem with some technical problem. I don't know.
आज भी मुझे मैम ने कनेक्ट करके दिया है like my class. I don't know what is happening. It's just like you will be able to connect it when someone lets you in, but वो let in होता ही नहीं है कभी. This is happening from the last week, and when Ronit said this same thing. So there is some problem with the class, or maybe the technical issue from the institute side.
Okay, so whenever the class starts, you guys try to connect and it didn't get connected, right?
Yeah, I did that. I connected the class at 1:55 only. But somehow पता नहीं क्या होता है when we select that ask to join, उसके बाद it comes to be able to join when someone lets you in. तो उसके बाद क्लास ज्वाइन ही नहीं होता है till 45 minutes.
Alright, yes, actually we all faced the same issue few days back also. We started the class after 45 minutes because I was unable to connect. So there could be a possibility this is an IT issue or something. I will talk to the faculty about that. We'll see if we can fix this problem as soon as possible, okay?
Yes,
because the same thing happened to me as well.
Yeah, I mean because of that we are not able to attend the classes. मैंने Friday भी attend नहीं कर पाई, कल भी attend नहीं कर पाई.
Okay. All right. I'll see that. So whenever, well, I might get somebody from the faculty told me that I might get a official number, and you can contact me on that official number. So in case you guys are not able to connect or there is any issue, just leave me a message. I will give you a number when I will get the number. Okay, not on my personal number.
Okay.
So that I'll make sure that whosoever is texting me are there online, are connected, and only then we will start the class. Alright?
Okay.
Okay. Because this actually is a problem and it happened with me also.
So alright? Classes on Zoom now, that is much better.
You want to shift the class on Zoom? Well, that I need to talk to the higher management about that. Yeah, Zoom is a little convenient and I understand that, but I need to talk to them. So if something like that, is there any change? I will let you know guys.
Okay.
Okay? And we will fix this problem, don't worry. Alright? Okay, so yesterday, Divya, we haven't done anything new. We did our revision. So we were doing duties and responsibilities of the cabin crew. That's all. Nothing new in that. Okay. So, alright. Who will tell me that what when I say that means? Who will explain me that?
Sorry, can't hear you.
I said explain me what do you mean by reporting at the airport?
It's the first phase of flight. Then after we should report to our before the flight.
Yes.
We will meet our person and greet them.
Right.
She or he will give us the information like load and special handling passengers, number of entries.
Right.
At last, she will ask us some questions related to emergencies and all.
Right.
Okay. Then we will go to meet the captain. There we will greet them and they will tell us about the any turbulence or weather, any delays there, and what is the exactly time we will reach our destination.
Yes, right. Yes, that's it. Okay, great. Tell me, how will you greet the captain?
First, we will say good afternoon, Captain Sharma. My name is Janvi, and we are flying together today.
Okay, that's great. Yes, exactly. That's how you do it. Great. Thank you so much, Janvi. Now, who will tell me what is the second phase of flight? Who will tell me? Yes, Shubham.
The second phase is pre-flight check.
Pre-flight checks. Okay. So what do you do in pre-flight checks?
All the equipments are in particular place like oxygen bottle, fire extinguisher, first aid kit.
Yes, right. Right, yes. You check all the pre-flight equipments. And after that, Shubham, anyone else? What do you mean by pre-flight checks?
Ma'am, shall I?
Yes, Ankita.
Ma'am, we can check all the equipment on the board.
Who will do what?
We can check all the equipment on the board. How many equipments are there? Quantity, quality, everything.
Okay, you will check the quantity. You will check it is in the right location. You will check the right number of the equipment. Okay, what else? What do you do after that?
Sorry, ma'am?
What do you do after that?
Pantry filling.
Sorry, what, Divya?
Pantry, ma'am. The food.
Catering. That's the catering.
Yeah, catering.
Okay. Shubham, can you hear me now? I don't know, maybe there is some network issues, guys. I'm not sure. So just bear with me. Alright, or you want to watch another video, because if I'm not audible to you guys, then there's no point of discussing this thing right now.
Yes, ma'am, you're not audible.
Okay, so I will play another video for you. Alright?
Yes, ma'am.
So you just watch the video today, and tomorrow we will do the whole topic. Just be online. Let me just see the best video which I can show you right now. Let me see the video regarding decompression.
It was very relaxed out.
Okay, you have seen that one where the aircraft, there is a structural damage and then there was a decompression, right? You guys have seen that video. Yes or no?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, let me see. What else I can show you?
I'm getting sure she
I'm sorry? I'm sorry?
I'm getting sure.
Sorry. Saurav, you are not audible to me. Could you please write it down in the chat box? Okay, so
1,300 planes take off from here every day, carrying over 75,000 passengers. It's the peak of the summer season, and Stapleton is packed with vacationers and business travelers. Debbie McKelvey will be among the vacationers flying from Stapleton today. She's taking her children, Devon, age 6, and her son Ryan, who's 7, to a family reunion back in her home state of Pennsylvania.
I was going home for 2 weeks with my children, and I was very, very excited about the trip.
Debbie is taking advantage of United Airlines Children's Day promotion. Today, kids under 14 can fly for one set, but each must fly with a paying adult. Debbie pairs up with a tennis club girlfriend, Ruth Ness, so she can sit with one of the kids.
It was nice having Ruth with me because she entertained one child while I was entertaining the other child.
1:15 p.m. Debbie, Ruth, and the kids wait to board flight UA-232 to Philadelphia via Chicago. Commanding the flight is Captain Alfred C. Haynes. His cabin staff reported a minor electrical fault in the galley on the previous leg, but engineers have given it the all clear. Captain Haynes is a veteran pilot with 7,190 hours logged in the DC-10. The passengers will be in safe hands today.
The DC-10 is a great airplane to fly. I think it's termed an old man's airplane because it's so simple to fly.
But this time, in the late 1980s, there are over 400 DC-10s in service. But it's a plane with a troubled history. Windsor, Ontario, 1972. A cargo door blows out on a year-old DC-10, causing severe decompression. The pilots managed to land the plane safely. 2 years later, a door comes off a Turkish Airlines DC-10 flying out of Paris. This time, the violent decompression tears the plane apart in midair. All 346 people on board die. McDonnell Douglas finds the fault and fixes it. But the reputation of the DC-10 never fully recovers. The DC-10 making flight 232 today is in its 17th year of service and has flown over 43,000 hours. So far, without incident. Today should be no different. Jerry Schemmel is Deputy Commissioner of the Continental Basketball Association and a frequent flyer.
I was never a nervous flyer. I always kind of enjoyed flying. I took my first flight at age 18. I always enjoyed it.
Jerry is flying to Columbus on business with his boss and great friend, Jay Ramsdell. Their original flight is cancelled, but Jay gets a seat on the very next flight. The bad news is, there's no seat for Jerry. Jay decides to stay with his buddy and wait for an even later flight.
I didn't think much of it at that time. I thought it was a nice gesture. I thought to myself, I hope I would have done the same thing.
Finally, after a 6.5-hour wait, Jerry and Jay both get seats on flight UA 232 to Philadelphia. Flight 232 is busy today. It's carrying 285 passengers and 11 crew. Debbie McKelvey boards with her friend and 2 kids. They add to an unusually high number of children on board. 52 in total, thanks to the Children's Day deal. For senior flight attendant Jan Brown Law, lots of children on board means a busy flight ahead. After a 4-day trip, Jan is excited to be heading home to Chicago.
I just remember feeling just the energy of this last leg and getting all pumped up to do the service.
Captain Haynes, co-pilot Bill Records, and flight engineer W. Dvorak run through their pre-flight checks. They taxi out to the runway and await the takeoff clearance. At 2:09 p.m., the 3-engine jet flies out of Denver.
The morning we left Denver, it was clear skies, beautiful day, nice smooth air, comfortable flight. Just a routine flight.
Debbie McKelvey sits with her son Ryan, while her friend Ruth is one row behind, looking after her daughter Devon. At 3:16 p.m., they're finishing their meal. Suddenly, out of the blue, a terrifying blast rips through the plane.
The first thing I thought was a bomb has gone off. I really did. I thought someone had planted a bomb. It had been detonated and we started to drop.
The only way I can think to explain it, it's like you're driving down a highway and you hit a pothole. I instinctively sat down on the floor and held on, not knowing if it were a decompression, that everything that isn't tied down securely is going to be sucked out.
There's no sign of any visible damage inside the plane, but up in the cockpit, Captain Haynes scans the engine instruments and quickly realizes that his number 2 engine is malfunctioning.
I've never had an engine failure in flight. Only in the flight simulator. Never in flight.
But this time, it's happening for real. 3:17 p.m. Captain Haynes' priority is to shut down the problem engine. He's not too worried. The DC-10 can fly comfortably on its remaining 2 wing-mounted engines. Haynes follows the shutdown procedure and cuts off fuel and power to the number 2 engine. The problem engine is off. But now, flight engineer W. Dvorak spots something else wrong.
Ow, we lost all hydraulic power.
His instruments tell him that all 3 of the plane's hydraulic systems are empty. He cannot believe his eyes. The hydraulic systems operate the plane's flaps, ailerons, rudder, and elevator. Without these controls, the pilots won't be able to steer the plane or take it up or down. Pilot Bill Record is horrified to find his flight controls are no longer responding. The plane starts to bank steeply to the right, and he's powerless to stop it.
That's when we realized we were in a world of hurt. Something was drastically wrong.
Now Captain Haynes tries the flight controls, but he cannot get the DC-10 back into level flight either. The plane is now trying to roll over. Terrifying prospect.
I have nothing to control the pitch of the aircraft.
flying the aircraft.
It's every pilot's nightmare. Flight 232 is at 11,000 meters and out of control. If its left wing continues to lift, the plane will flip over and tumble to its doom. United Airlines Flight 232 is down to 2 engines. Worse still, the plane has lost all conventional flight controls. Despite everything that Captain Haynes tries, the plane seems bent on turning over. Back in the cabin, the passengers feel the plane banking steeply.
Now, my son at 7.5, he had always been a people watcher. And he looked around and he said, something's not right here.
You can feel the turn. You can feel the sensation physically of your body leaning off to the right side. I remember feeling that, thinking that was very unusual.
3:18 p.m. The left wing is so high that the plane is in an extremely steep bank. Al Haynes knows that within a few more seconds, it will roll over and tumble out of control. Left it. If it fails, Flight 232 is doomed.
The first reaction was to just close one throttle and push the other one. Well, see if maybe that would help.
In a desperate bid to restore level flight, Haynes tries adjusting the relative power of the 2 wing engines. If the right engine he still has no flight controls, but he regains a crude form of steering by using the throttles. But Haynes finds that he can only make right-hand turns. 3:20 p.m. He reports the loss of flight controls and requests a flight path to the nearest airport. The pilots have no idea how they're going to land the crippled plane.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is the captain. Shut down number 2.
Now the loss of flight controls.
Chicago, but we may be just...
Not all the passengers find his words reassuring.
You could just feel a tenseness in the and that's when you kind of felt there's something not right here.
Is dropping at around 200. Need to attempt an emergency landing soon before they lose height altogether. 3:22. Air traffic control informs the flight. This is a small regional airport near the sleepy town of Sioux City. 3:25 p.m.
Hold on. I've been in this business a long time, and you can tell. You have almost a sixth sense, I guess.
Correct. UA-232 is heading right for his city. 9 fire trucks race out to their emergency positions on one of the runways. And starts to soar up and then down in a random, uncontrollable cycle. For the pilots, it's like riding a roller coaster through the sky.
I had no idea how long we could keep that airplane.
Debbie McKelvey feels the plane's erratic motion and fears for her life.
Here I have a 6-year-old and a 7-year-old. You start praying, if I'm going to die, please make sure we all go quick.
3:26 p.m. Captain Haynes calls his senior flight attendant up to the cockpit.
When I opened that door, the whole atmosphere hit me. It's the worst crisis possible.
The captain Captain tells Jan
through the first class cabin. I just could not look anybody in the eye because I was afraid they'd read the fear in my eye.
Denny Fitch is a DC-10 training pilot, flying home from an instructor session. He knows that something is wrong and offers his help. 3:29. What Denny finds in the cockpit shocks.
It was an amazing scene for me because both the pilots were in fact on the controls.
Pilot Denny Fitch is ready for any emergency, but he's never seen anything like this before.
I was teacher for having no hydraulics. The first thought that came to my mind, to be honest, was that I was going to die that afternoon.
Ladies and gentlemen, Captain Haynes now tells his passengers the plane is damaged and they'll be making an emergency landing in Sioux City. 296 people could lose their lives. Getting this airplane down without crashing will be the ultimate test of pilot skill. Denny offers to help out any way he can.
I said, Captain, would you want me to do your throttles? And he responded, yes, do that.
Denny takes over on the throttles, the only controls still functioning. They allow him some degree of steering, but the plane is still only able to make right-hand turns.
As far as I'm concerned, he's now the fourth member of the crew because he was willing to step in there and help us any way he could.
3:48. The DC-10 is now 12 minutes from Sioux. It's time for the pilots to face an almost unthinkable prospect. In a few minutes, they must attempt to land a 165-ton jet without proper flight controls. The lives of 285 passengers are in their hands. The pilots must now try to line up for the final approach into Sioux City Airport. Denny Fitch will attempt to steer the plane and control its descent, all by adjusting the throttles. Once more, the plane can only make right-hand turns. The plan is to make a series of looping turns and hope that as they come out of their final circuit, they're facing the runway. The odds are stacked against them. At 3:50 p.m., Senior Flight Attendant Jan Brown-Law begins her final safety briefing.
The passengers were right there in the palm of our hand. There, you could have heard a pin drop.
Jan pays special attention to the 4 children too small to have their own seats. Official guidelines are non-specific, but United Airlines procedure at the time is for adults to hold these lap children on the floor during an emergency landing. Jan is anxious about the procedure, but has no option but to follow protocol.
It makes my skin crawl to this day to think that I found myself telling passengers, parents of lap children, to put their child on the floor and hold them down.
As the flight crew near Sioux City, they are only too aware of what's at stake.
You've got 296 lives in your 2 hands. You literally do. And I've never felt so overwhelmingly responsible for anything in my life.
With no brakes, the DC-10 will need a long runway. Air traffic control assigns them runway 31 at 2,700 meters. It's the longest at Sioux City. 3:52 p.m. Denny Fitch puts the plane into its final looping turn. He knows the crippled jet would never be able to regain altitude for a second attempt.
This was it. We had to land on that runway. One time, that's all we had.
As they emerge from their final loop, the pilots see a wonderful sight. Sioux City Airport, dead ahead. There's just one problem. It's the wrong runway.
Here we are, there's a runway right in front of us, we're out of time, we're out of altitude, that's where we're going to go.
Runway 22 is much shorter than runway 31, and it's full of fire trucks and ambulances.
It wasn't until probably a couple of minutes at the most that we had a change in that the runway was actually shifted then from 1331 to runway 22.
3:59. Fire trucks race out of the path of the plunging DC-10.
And so we were basically just kind of scrambling, getting out of the way, if you will, and trying to get to an ideal position for that particular runway.
Captain Haynes orders the passengers into the brace position.
Brace.
The minute we said brace, it was like a breeze going over a field of wheat. Everybody in the cabin disappeared from sight to go into their brace position. I think this is it, and I actually made my son shut the window shade. I thought, we don't need to see, the end as it's coming.
As the pilots desperately try to line up the airplane with the runway, they realize they're still coming in at 400 kilometers per hour, around 150 kilometers per hour faster than normal. But with no control of the flaps, they cannot slow the descent. The alarm sounds from the ground proximity warning system. They're descending too rapidly. The plane is plunging at 560 meters per minute, over 6 times the normal rate. Down on the ground, a local news crew races into position to cover the crash landing.
Not gonna be pretty.
4 p.m. Just seconds from landing, the nose and right wing drop. If they come in at this angle, the plane could break apart.
And I shoved both the throttles to maximum power, hoping that would result in the nose being pulled up.
Denny Fitch desperately struggles to bring the nose back up, but it's too late. The engines don't respond in time. 4 p.m. and 16 seconds. The plane smashes into the runway.
It just felt like we dropped out of the sky and hit the ground. It wasn't like it was an emergency landing. It was a crash.
I could hear all the screeching metal and noises that you've never heard before and you hope you'll never hear again.
The right landing gear and wing shear off, spilling fuel and sparking a fire.
I could see fireballs because I guess the plane, it's screeching on the runway. And then that was my next thought. Oh my God, we're gonna burn to death.
The jet careers along the runway on its wing stop for about 600 meters, then breaks apart.
The cockpit had snapped off like a pencil tip, and we became a tumbling 200 mile an hour piece of wreckage.
The main section of the fuselage skids further down the runway, rolls over on its back, and comes to a halt at the side of the airfield. The plane is split into 3 main pieces: cockpit, tail section, and middle passenger section. Dozens of surviving passengers flee the burning cabin. Fire trucks and ambulances race to help them. Emergency workers arrive to an horrific scene of dead and injured passengers. Survivors escaping the wreckage scatter through cornfields at the edge of the runway. Debbie and her son Ryan are among them.
I grabbed my son and we started running and running. And I had no idea where we are.
Some of the children and babies held on the floor before landing are missing. The violence of the crash tore them from their parents' grasp. One grief-stricken mother confronts flight attendant Jan Brown-Law.
And she just looked up at me and she said, "You told me to put him on the floor, that it would be all right." And I thought, I'm going to live with those holes for the rest of my life.
The child, 23-month-old Evan Zhao, tragically died in the burning jet. In the chaos of the crash, Debbie McKelvey and her son Ryan managed to get out of the wreck, but she can't see 6-year-old daughter Devon anywhere.
So then you start really thinking, why didn't I have both of them? And it's just a horrible, horrible sinking feeling.
Jerry Schemmel escaped the cabin unhurt, but now he hears a baby's cries. Despite the choking fumes, he ventures back inside the burning aircraft.
I didn't think if I go back in the thing will explode or I might not find my way back out. I just reacted. I heard the cries of baby and the next thing I know I'm back inside the aircraft.
As the central cabin section burns, it starts to fill with toxic fumes. Smoke like this can kill in minutes. Parents like Debbie McKelvey fear that their missing children could still be somewhere inside the blazing jet. Flight 232 crashes at Sioux City Airport and lies in a smoking ruin at the edge of the runway. Survivors flee the crashed airliner, but a baby's cries draw passenger Jerry Schemmel back inside.
So I finally got right over top of the crying and I'm feeling around and there's a baby stuck inside this overhead bin. I just grabbed the baby with one arm and scooped her out of a hole. I got back on my feet, found the opening, just kind of aimed for the sunlight and shot out the plane the second time.
Jerry's actions probably saved the baby's life. But Debbie McKelvey is desperate. She fears her daughter and friend have not survived the crash. Then, suddenly, she spots a face. It's her 6-year-old daughter, Devon, emerging from the smoke.
It was the absolute best feeling because she was there and she was okay.
While passengers flee the wreckage, Captain Haynes and the flight crew are trapped in the cockpit. The plane's nose has buried itself into the soft earth beside the runway. It's the last place the rescuers reach. They have to use a forklift and cutting equipment to get through the twisted wreckage. It takes 30 minutes to reach the pilots. At 5 p.m., rescuers pull out all 4 pilots, seriously injured, but alive.
As I remember the pat on my chest, and his words to me were, "You're okay, buddy, I'm here, I got you, you're gonna be okay." And I felt this tremendous relief.
The flaming wreck of UA-232 burns for over 2 hours. 9 helicopters and 34 ambulances evacuate survivors. Jerry Schemmel's thoughts turn to his buddy Jay, whom he lost sight of in the crash. Jerry hopes that he might have made it, but as time goes by, he loses all hope.
I had a pretty good hunch 8 hours after the crash when he didn't show up anywhere that he wasn't a survivor.
Jay Ramsdell is one of 111 passengers who lose their lives in the crash. 1 flight attendant is also killed. 11 children are among the dead. Remarkably, 184 people survived the Sioux City crash. But for the pilots of Flight 232, any number of deaths is a tragedy. Training pilot Denny Fitch learns how many died when his wife visits him in hospital.
And she started crying because she realized I didn't know the truth. That in fact, 112 people had died behind me. And I saw her cry, I had my answer. And I cried every waking moment for the next 3 days. I just couldn't stop crying. It just so tore my heart out to know that people died behind me. And I was ready to die for them, and I didn't want them to die.
Al Haynes and the flight crew are determined that something positive should come out of the tragedy.
I would like to say that this crew, and in fact the entire industry, is dedicated to finding the cause of this accident. So maybe we can never have it happen again.
The National Transportation Safety Board, or NTSB, dispatches an investigation team to Sioux City. With 427 DC-10s still in service all around the world, they need to find out what happened to the plane, and quickly. Frank Hildrup leads the team, analyzing the aircraft structure.
There's a lot of apprehension and anxiety, of course, that we always go into these things with, and I was fairly new at the time. I had not been with the agency but for about 9 months.
Hildrup and the NTSB team arrive in Iowa 9 hours after the crash and get straight down to work. The investigators' first priority is to try to recover every piece of the wreckage so that they can reassemble the aircraft. It's a mammoth task.
It was such an immense accident scene that we just knew we had a long investigation ahead of ourselves.
The crash scatters thousands of fragments of debris over a distance of 1 kilometer. Emergency services and the National Guard mobilize hundreds of personnel. They scour every square meter of land around the runway. The tiniest component might tell them what triggered the crash. As investigator Jim Wildey knows only too well.
If you want to understand how the airplane came apart, if you want to understand the interrelationships of various pieces, it is very useful sometimes to put the structure back together.
Investigators interview the 4 pilots to explore the bizarre loss of controls they reported during the flight.
Now we've lost all hydraulic pressure.
Captain Haynes and the crew confirmed that shortly after the dramatic failure of their number 2 engine, all their hydraulic systems went down. It mystifies investigator Frank Hildrup.
I know personally I wasn't prepared for dealing with an airplane crash where it had lost all of its hydraulics. Extremely unique event and something I personally had never encountered before.
Hydraulics operate all the flight controls on the DC-10. The flaps that help control descent. The elevators that pitch the plane up and down. The rudder that steers it. The ailerons that make it bank. Pressurized fluid inside hydraulic lines operates these mechanical controls. There are 3 separate and independent hydraulic systems. Even if one system is breached, it should not cause the loss of hydraulic fluid in the others. To lose fluid from all 3 systems at once is almost impossible. Experts put the odds at 1 billion to 1. Then, an unexpected find. Farmers 90 kilometers from Sioux City report aircraft wreckage scattered on their land. Investigators examine the debris and find that it includes components from the number 2 hydraulic system in the tail near the failed engine. The team can calculate from the plane's flight path exactly when these parts fell. They discover it happened at 3:16 p.m., the same moment as the loud bang and the engine failure. Everything points to a catastrophic event inside the engine, which then damages the hydraulic systems. They go back to the wrecked plane and examine every millimeter of its hydraulic lines. It's a painstaking process, but it pays off. They find puncture holes in the pressure lines of the plane's other 2 hydraulic systems, and the holes in both sets of pressure lines are near the failed engine.
We determined that all the 3 hydraulic systems had been breached, and that's why the hydraulic fluid was lost, and they lost the ability to really control the airplane.
It's incredible, but true. Something did put all 3 hydraulic systems out of action at exactly the same moment. But the team still has to prove that the number 2 engine caused the damage. They inspect the puncture holes with a scanning electron microscope and find minute traces of titanium. Titanium is used for critical airplane parts because it's tough, yet very light. On the DC-10, the only titanium anywhere near the tail section is inside the number 2 engine. And when NTSB engineers reconstruct the DC-10's number 2 engine, a new clue confirms the team's theory.
We learned that a major portion of the number 2 engine in the tail of the airplane had come apart and was missing.
The missing part is the fan disc, the massive central hub of the engine's fan assembly. It's made of titanium. Investigators are starting to get a picture of what caused the bizarre loss of controls aboard flight UA-232. 44 minutes from disaster. The loud bang that crew and passengers hear is the 170-kilogram fan disc fracturing. The broken fan disc bursts through the engine housing. The blast fractures a section of the number 2 hydraulic system. But in a piece of catastrophic bad luck, fragments also puncture lines in both remaining systems.
1-0, all 3. I'm sure. David, say 0. All hydraulic 1 down.
42 minutes to go. The plane loses all its flight controls. The tail section is so badly damaged that the plane can only make right-hand turns. And without elevators, the pilots cannot keep the plane on a level flight path through the sky. But the NTSB investigators still don't know what caused the fan disc to fracture. Until they find out, more than 200 other DC-10s could be flying around with engines that have a similar hidden fault. They must locate and examine the missing pieces of fan disc. Investigators calculate the likely trajectory of the fan disc debris to find out where it might have landed. They narrow it down to a tract of Iowa corn belt, 36 square kilometers in size.
I would consider the search for that fan disc throwing a needle in a haystack type of effort.
Investigators pull out all the stops to find the missing fan disc. They scour the area with 4 helicopters, but find that the 3-meter-high corn stalks conceal everything on the ground. They even deploy infrared cameras to try to locate the pieces. But after weeks of searching, they draw a blank. General Electric, the engine manufacturer, offers members of the public a large reward for the missing fan disc. But there's still no sign of it. 2 months go by, and harvest time comes around. Janice and Dale Sorensen have a 180-hectare farm right in the middle of the search area. Tuesday, October 10th, 1989, and Janice Sorensen is out bringing in the corn.
As I was combining, I felt a little resistance on the front of the combine, and I backed it up and then put it in neutral and got out and looked, and I knew immediately that this was the piece they were looking for.
It's a massive chunk of debris, half buried in the earth. Teams from General Electric and the NTSB race to the Sorensen farm. Dale and Janice help investigators dig out the piece of wreckage. This is the Sorensens' own video footage of their find.
I had a little shovel long, and I went and got the tractor with a loader and put a chain around it, hoisted it up, and then we took it down to the turkey shed, which was not very far away. And we had hot water there, so we washed it off, so it was spick and span.
Investigators quickly confirm that the debris is a major chunk of the missing fan disc from flight UA-232. Then they find another piece nearby. Together, the two parts complete the entire missing fan disc. Janice Sorensen learned that her find could hold the key to the disaster.
I was very emotional about it. I had some tears. It was a combination of the excitement of finding the piece and the tears for those who lost their life. One more.
Janice and her husband Dale collect General Electric's $120,000 reward. They give over half the money to charity. The NTSB can now begin the next phase of their investigation. They fly the fractured fan disc to the labs of the engine manufacturer General Electric to find out what could break apart such a robust metal component. Jim Wildy, a metallurgist by training, examines the fan disc, starting with the main fracture line where it broke apart. He spots something branching off it, a fatigue crack, 13 millimeters long. It's rare to find metal fatigue in a fan disc. These components are specifically designed to withstand the enormous rotational forces within the engine. Then, at the base of the fatigue crack, Wildy sees a tiny cavity.
The size of it was, maximum in any one direction was about 50 thousandths of an inch.
As he scans the cavity more closely, he sees that the metal around it looks discolored. He takes a sample from this suspect area for testing. What he discovers will shock the investigation team and rock the aviation industry to its core. Investigator Jim Wildy examines a tiny cavity in the fractured fan disc from flight UA-232. What he finds stuns him. Around the cavity, there is an impurity in the titanium alloy. It's called a hard alpha inclusion, a brittle defect smaller than a fingernail. Analysis reveals that it was caused by excess nitrogen during the forging of the metal ingot. The fan disc in the DC-10 was made from titanium that harbored a fatal hidden defect. It's the final piece of the puzzle. The NTSB team can now put together the chain of events that left the passengers and crew of flight UA-232 seconds from disaster. As the DC-10's fan disc rotates at 3,800 RPM, the huge stresses initiate a minute crack in the defect. With every flight, it grows fractionally bigger. July 19th, 1989, 44 minutes from disaster. The fan disc has been in service for 15,503 flights over 17 years. The crack reaches 13 millimeters in length. The faulty fan disc can no longer cope with the stresses imposed by its rotation. It shears in two. The damage it causes makes the DC-10 virtually unflyable. For the next 40 minutes, the pilot struggles to control the plane. Five minutes to go. Flight 232 comes out of its final turn into Sioux City. 20 seconds. As the plane comes into land, the right wing drops. Disaster strikes. The right wing tip hits the ground, and the DC-10 careers down the runway. A $21 million jet weighing 165 tons is brought down by a tiny metallic floor. For the NTSB investigation team, there's a terrible twist to the tragedy. investigators discover that United Airlines technicians made a routine inspection of the defective fan disc just 16 months before the crash. They're disturbed. The crack was on the fan disc surface. At the time of the inspection, the crack could have been close to 13 millimeters long.
This disc had been inspected before the accident, and we determined that the crack was of a detectable size, but that it just wasn't detected.
The NTSB report concluded that the crack was probably missed due to human error. The report accepted that United Airlines inspection procedures complied with regulations and were up to industry standard, and cited human factors as an industry-wide problem in engine inspection. In the wake of the Sioux City disaster, the Federal Aviation Authority upgraded engine inspection procedures. The FAA also demanded changes to the DC-10's hydraulic systems. Airlines were required to add shut-off valves to limit the amount of fluid that can drain from a breach in hydraulic lines. But today, lap children are still allowed to remain unrestrained during emergency landings. Ever since the crash, Jan Brown Law has campaigned for all children to have allocated seats and safety restraints on airplanes. She has never forgotten the young boy, Evan Zhao, who lost his life on her watch.
Evan would be 17 years old today had he been in a seat.
Denny Fitch, Al Haynes, and the other crew members received industry awards for their extraordinary professionalism and valor. Jerry Schimmel, who now has children of his own, will never forget the debt he owes the pilots.
I've thought about those guys every day for 16 years. I don't think we could have been equipped with a better cockpit crew than what we had.
The safety measures triggered by the Sioux City crash transformed aviation safety, not just on the DC-10, but on all passenger airliners. The new rules should ensure that such a bizarre and devastating accident can never happen again.
Cholera.
Are you there, guys?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so did you just speak to?
Yes, ma'am.
Alright. So, it's already 4 right now. So what we can do is we can discuss both the videos tomorrow. Okay? And also we can complete the cases of life topic tomorrow. Okay? Am I audible?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am. So we will discuss scenarios, both the videos which we have seen today, we will discuss it tomorrow along with the phases of flight. We will complete that topic also. Okay?
Okay.
Alright. Okay. You guys want to ask me right now? Alright, okay then. I'll see you guys tomorrow. Have a very good evening. Alright? Saurav, I can't hear you.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
Bye. Bye.
Thank you, ma'am.